Okay, we're ready to go again. Thank you.
Well, that's all you have to do.
That's all I have to do. It's just, I need a good spot to stop that makes sense.
That's great.
Okay, I was going to ask you, in some of the plantations on the island, we have to worry that the house may still have a septic tank as opposed to a sewer. Are there any things like that that we need to worry about in Sea Pines as a realtor, so we stay out of trouble and Alan doesn't go to jail?
You might want to just go ahead and check, but they might still have a septic tank. They weren't required to pull the septic tanks out, but they did have sewer put in the last of the roads about 10, 15 years ago.
It's by the beach streets
Yeah.
that if you're gonna run into it, Barbara, what are your thoughts?
Well, in Calabogie K, they voted not to have it,
So they still have
all
septic
on
tanks,
septic.
okay.
Okay.
I would just call PSD, the PSD, South
Yeah,
Beach
but just to
PSD,
make sure.
and just to make sure.
Because
Well,
you can't
South Island
really
Yes.
tell
PSD, yeah.
If
Yes,
it's been
yeah.
installed, they may not have hooked it up.
That's right.
I had a problem with a listing on Red Oak, which had been on septic and is now on sewer. I listed the property. My owner was from Korea, and she told me when I listed the property that it was on sewer. I sold the property to a client of mine and told him it's on sewer, and 2 months after closing, he called me from Chicago and he said, my rental management company just told me that they had to clean out the septic tank. I bought a sewer connection for it.
Just because they're getting a bill, they could be getting a bill for an availability fee, so just
Yes.
because they're getting a bill does not mean that they're hooked up. You need to make sure that you find out.
Yeah, South Island Public District Service made the determination that 5 years after they installed sewer on a street, they would start billing for sewer on the assumption that everybody had connected, even though they never, an individual property owner never got a permit. They assumed that they connected anyway. And that was why my Korean owner assumed she was on sewer.
Because she was getting a bill for the
And
availability.
she was getting a bill and she was paying for it. And she was not on sewer. I talked to my attorney about suing the public service district, and he said it's not worth it, so.
They
So
got retroactive.
Now, the
what
seller
they've been
disclosure?
billing her for you to subtract from your.
On the seller disclosure, I think she said she was on sewer. But she had moved back to Korea, and nobody knew how to reach her. Okay?
Great.
And so it cost me $2,500.
Oh.
But it was, as it turned out, it was wise to give in and pay for it, because about 6 months later he decided he wanted to sell the house, and I sold it for him for $900,000 or something. So.
It was good.
And disclosed that it was.
Well, by that time I paid for it to be on sewer. Yeah, it was on sewer then.
Beautiful new sewer.
Brand new.
So.
So you call the South Island Public Service District, just if you need to confirm that?
Yeah, but they may tell you it's on sewer and it may not be.
You have to find out whether it's been hooked up.
Converted, yeah.
How do
Whether
you find that
they've
out?
taken the line.
I don't know, I guess
The
you
public
would.
service district will know that.
Okay.
Having been on a
Yeah,
public service
I think they
district
will.
board, they will know whether, because there's a hookup fee
Okay.
that they have to pay to the public service district. So, and the hookup is to bring the line, they bring the line into the street, and the hookup is to bring the line from the street into the house. So the public service district will know that.
Okay. Are there any other cautions that you would give to realtors to stay out of trouble in Sea Pines?
Call the regimes for the, before you write any contracts, call the regimes to find out. The big thing now is the pending assessments and how they pay their insurance. And it used to be that when you paid a regime, it covered everything. That's not the case anymore. A lot of regimes over the years have changed how the regimes are managed, and they don't pay for as much as they used to based on fairness. say for instance, a clipper that I was trying to sell found out that the people with the patios upstairs have to pay more of the regime than the people downstairs that don't have them because of the cost of the wood. Some people have to pay for windows now when they didn't require them to before. So make sure you talk to the regime if you can. If not, disclose in the contract. And number 6, any questions that you want answered, or make it contingent upon your buyer having acceptable answers to those issues, because it's not straight down the board anymore.
And it changes
Daily.
all the time.
Yeah.
There are some villa complexes in Sea Pines that actually are what we call fee simple, where you own the land. And that threw me off the first few times I ran into that, which means, you know, it's a different kind of ownership, although it's still much like Forest Villas, for example. You actually own the land, even though they're in clusters and they're attached.
And you pay regime.
Yes, and you're paying a regime. But if you needed a new roof, for
You do.
example, you do your own. So
You
there's,
pay for your own painting.
Ocean courses like that.
Yes.
If you're,
yes.
The Belton regime used to pay for the roofs in Lake Forest. Did they change that? They used to
Yeah.
do common paint and roofs.
You'd have to check.
Yeah.
if I'm thinking about selling one of those, where would I look to see if it's fee simple or if it's a condo?
They changed that about a year ago in the MLS because of me, because I had a night heron and I was putting it in houses because it is technically a house. It's a fee simple. And they've changed that now for if you go into the villas and somebody's supposed to click whether you own the land or not. Because we have this generic thing called villas, and really they're townhouses individually owned. They're condominium run, but they are not condominium owned.
Okay.
So,
But I
but
wouldn't
Lake
count on
Forest and Carolina Place, you're responsible for your own paint, your own roof. They do try to do it in conjunction with the other portion of that building, but it's all different now.
And I wouldn't count on it being correct in the listing. Once
No.
again, I would call the
No.
regime and say, by any chance, is this fee simple?
Okay.
You know, you ask other
Or
agents
you
and
can
they
see it on
may,
the tax records, whether it's fee simple or condominium.
okay,
Yeah.
That's a good place.
okay.
Okay, very good. Who would like to kind of pretend that we're your customer, what your dialogue is with us that you say about Sea Pines? Do you have a 5-minute or 10-minute spiel of why Sea Pines is so great? Am I asking a bad question?
Well, I think it just
No,
depends
it's a
on
great
what
question.
their goals are, you know, if they want a home or they want a rental or
Well, let's
second
start
home
off
or
with a
whatever
home.
it is, but
Let's say it's a home, and how about second home? Does that work? Can you tell us what you would say to that customer?
Well, 9 out of 10 times, if they want a home in Sea Pines, a second home in Sea Pines, they visited Sea Pines before. And the
Okay.
reason why they want to be in Sea Pines is because they've visited there, that's where they've made memories, and that's where they think that they want to be. And where the excitement is because of all the national attention that Sea Pines has. And I just discussed that aspect of it with them and why they like Sea Pines and why they want to be in Sea Pines. Sea Pines offers an awful lot. It's the largest community on the island. Miles of bike trails. The natural nature there is beautiful. They've got the dolphin boats and the fishing and all kind of things for a family to be able to do while they're here, as well as the tournament in the spring and activities throughout the whole year. So I try to cover. Of course, the beach.
Yeah.
You know, but you can tell me how much I go to the beach, but of course the beach. But I also tell people that once they get here, they'll find the beach less important because there are so many other things to do. Is when they're here for 2 weeks, they're concentrating on the beach. But once they get here, I like to point out that there are other things to do throughout the rest of the year besides those 2 weeks that they're going to come down for the beach.
What I do very often before I even put people in the car is I meet them in the conference room and talk to them if they are new to the community. And I give them a little bit of history on Hilton Head, where it got its name, what the original islanders, who they were, you know, et cetera, the Civil War. Then I talk about the fact that the Fraser, the Hack, and the McIntosh family after the Second World War bought out, I don't know the name of the New York family that owned most of the island as a hunting preserve, but they bought it And then in 1956, Charles Fraser graduated from Yale Law School and decided instead of having a career in law, he wanted to be a developer of a resort residential community, which became Sea Pines. And then I go into how he hired a Japanese professor of land planning from Harvard who came down and did the master plan. And that's why we have traffic circles, because it came from Cambridge or Boston. And I talk about the fact that when Sea Pines was designed, it was, I believe, the first golf community ever to have residential homes, lots overlooking a golf course. The golf courses prior to that had parallel fairways, like Planters Row in Port Royal. And so this was a revolutionary concept. And then they decided that they wanted to preserve the beauty of the land, and so houses could not make a statement. They had to be muted colors, and everything would be interconnected by bike paths and playgrounds for children and swimming pools, and you know. And then I talk about the fact that Sea Pines has 5 miles of the best beach on the island, and that on all the barrier islands on the east coast of the United States, the tidal action tends to wash the sand from the north end of the island to the south end of the island. And so at the north end of Hilton Head, we have had a problem of erosion, but from Coligny Circle south, basically, we have had accreting beaches, you know, for basically forever. And, you know, and I ask people, you know, if I'm boring you with this, just stop me, but people are generally very interested. Are you bored?
No, it's very interesting.
Teasing you.
I know I've bored people with history, and they've been too polite to tell me.
Yeah.
But I can see that, you can see it in their face, I mean.
You know, there used to be, back when we had tapes instead of CDs, there was a guy, an historian, who had it was like a 30-minute tape, very interesting history of Hilton Head. And I used to
Love to get a copy of that.
I used to have a copy, and I don't anymore. But and I used to get copies and give them out to people, because people are interested in all of that.
Also, I was going to say, in terms of what would draw someone to Sea Pines, is you know, ask them, what exactly are you looking for? You know, do you want to rent this when you're not using it? And that, if they say yes, that narrows you down to Sea Pine Shipyard and Palmetto Dunes, right there. So
Now, could you say that again? You can't rent in Sea Pine?
you can. I see. If
Oh,
they
can,
want to
yeah.
weekly rent,
I'm sorry.
that, aside from plantations, is narrowing you down to Sea Pine Shipyard and Palmetto
Okay.
Dunes.
I misunderstood.
Because the others, there's no weekly rentals allowed.
Yeah, Port Royal did that about 25 years ago. They got together as a community and changed their covenants and restrictions. And for many years after that, there were grandfathered houses, and I think there's 2 left in Port Royal now that are still grandfathered from that change that was made about 25 years ago. But that's why there's no short-term rentals in Port Royal.
Okay. I want to ask you, Chris, and thank you so much for doing this package for us. On the water sports at Harbour Town, do you take them down and show them where they can enjoy all these different sports?
Sometimes, yeah. It depends on, you know, how inquisitive the people are, how much time they have, and, you know, what their family unit is composed of. I may not do it on the first go-around, but if they have a lot of interest, yeah. And I was surprised, you know, when I went back down with someone, how much has been added. I mean, that whole new pier out there, it's phenomenal.
Yeah.
And when my son visits, you know, he's done things. He said, "Oh, did you know that Sea Pines property owners get a discount?" I said, "No, I didn't." But there's a lot to do, and sometimes, quite often, I will stay in my car because of the parking situation at Harbour Town, and let them walk around, and I'll drive. Other times, I'll get out of the car and walk with them.
Okay.
Usually if they're interested in Sea Pines, they want to see actually see the lighthouse if they've never been. So
Okay.
I would say definitely you want to take them to Harbour Town and to South Beach.
Mhm.
Okay.
Take them to Catch Court and walk through. The Catch and Cutter have walkthroughs from
Yeah,
the
that's a
parking
good idea.
lots. Park there and walk them through that way. It's a much easier. You
And
can't.
those archways are nice.
Those
when you
archways are very
walk
nice,
through.
and you walk through and the harbor opens up, and I forget which one you walk through and the lighthouse is just there, but don't take advantage of it if you're, only if you're showing property, because they have assigned parking in the summertime, but however, if you're showing property, that's a good way to get them into the harbor, and they see a nice part of the harbor anyway that way too.
Catch course.
Catch or Cutter. Well, Caravel too, you can with Caravel as well.
I think it's between Caribou.
Well, actually, each of
Mid-rise
the buildings, the
yeah.
mid-rise buildings
On the harbor.
have a
Right.
cut-through in the buildings,
In the
actually.
building, yeah.
Okay, let me ask you, I know that you have the stable there. What if I have a horse?
If you have a horse, my understanding is that yes, they allow boarding. They own their own horses, obviously, but they do allow boarding. I don't know what the fees are. And that stable has come a long way in the last 7 years.
Yeah,
It
it's
used to
incredible.
be, like old MacDonald had a farm, but now they gutted it. They completely rebuilt it. It is a beautiful statement at the
Yeah.
plantation. They also have a small petting zoo there that is adorable. They have goats and I don't know if there's chickens or whatever. Yeah, and they have 2 little Shetland ponies, and they had a Name the Pony contest several years back, and if I'm not mistaken, I think their names are Peanut Butter and Jelly.
Those are the goats.
Oh, those are the goats.
Those are the goats.
Okay.
His mother had twin goats, and one was
Okay.
named Peanut Butter, and the other one was named was Jelly.
And there's a small...
No, they were triplet goats, right? Peanut butter
Peanut butter
and jelly, I
and
think,
jelly.
which was made it so unusual because they never have triplets, but it was peanut butter and jelly.
And there's a Clydesdale, a small Clydesdale, Harley, who's over there. And it's a nice place to ride your bikes and stop, but you should definitely, if anybody has kids or grandkids, pull in there, because they're like, wow, I didn't know this was here. And then across from the equestrian center, there are farms, which a lot of the plantations have, and for a very small fee, it's maybe $100 a year for irrigation. You can plant fruits or vegetables or flowers, and a lot of the people that do that donate their. Wait, is that where you're garden? Are you gardening? I was just talking to someone that was gardening over there.
But I know of a couple of people who don't live in Sea Pines who garden over there, so I don't know what that deal is.
Oh.
I think that's just been lately because it's kind of the same reason that the club has dropped in membership is that Sea Pines, for the people who live there, is an aging community, and only in that respect in terms of residents. And they had a huge downswing in people who were renting the gardens because of the fact that a lot of those folks were moving on to whatever their next step was. So they started renting outside of the community. But that's just, I'm a master gardener, that's how I know that. But they're hoping to change that as more people move into Sea Pines and permanently.
It's such a nice spot, it really is.
It's
When our
lovely.
sons were born here, and I don't know what age it was, what year at Prec they had to do their butterfly gardens. And, you get 25 butterflies, and you have to identify them, and this and that, and this and that. Pin them on, yeah, wait for them to die. You're supposed to kill them first and then pin them. But anyway, the garden area had the most beautiful collection of butterflies out there. So that's where we got a lot of our butterflies.
They discourage people from having farms in their yard because it brings the flora and the fauna out, and one man's Bambi is another man's pot roast. So they don't really like having a lot of the fauna come up to the front door. So they discourage people from growing yummy things
Rutabagas, yeah.
for the flora and the fauna in their yard. So that's why they like to have them over by the garden.
You don't grow corn in your front yard.
You do not.
In Sea Pines. No.
Chris, I noticed one page that you downloaded, and if I catch you off guard, you can always say, don't ask me that. About the tennis. Can you tell us about the tennis and how can I play, and if I'm an owner, and can you tell me about that?
If you're an owner, well, there's no free tennis, so we'll start with that.
Okay.
There is,
Nothing is a la carte. I
Nothing-
mean, everything is
yeah.
a la carte, nothing is included.
yeah.
Okay.
You can play at Harbour Town. I have some owners that I know that are avid tennis players, and they will sign up for a clinic, either a daily clinic or a weekly clinic at Harbour Town. The tennis facility, as I said, is just wonderful. And I don't know what the rates are, but everything is paid. There are a few villa groups in Sea Pines, such as Racquet Club, that have their own tennis courts. And as an owner of Racquet Club or some of the others, you are entitled to play free tennis right there. But it's rare. It's the exception to have tennis courts on site. So you pay. You can play at Harbour Town, or South Beach also has a very nice tennis facility, pay as you play. And I think at South Beach you can buy a membership there too.
Yes, you can.
Yeah, and then of course the Sea Pines Country Club has tennis facility if you're a member there.
Is there anything special at the beach club for property owners? I know at some of the plantations, you could have a party, you could rent it out. Can you do that at the beach club?
I've done it at Tower Beach, not at the beach club, because at Tower Beach in South Beach, where the water tower is, they have grills. I mean, we've had birthday parties, we've had, gatherings for families, and you have to get there early. You can call and quote reserve it, but you just have to get there early and put your tablecloths on the tables. But that's a very nice place to have a gathering. Sometimes you'll do barbecues and then go to the beach. I remember groups of families getting together and on the beach, and actually the pizza companies will deliver to the beach too. So it's
Well,
terrific.
I'm gonna ask you something, and maybe nobody else cared but me, but when you were showing me the villas, you were kind enough to take me around and teach me. You showed me something very, very unique in the villas down from Harbour Town. Would you tell them what that is? The little graveyard?
Well, there is a cemetery, there's an
Oh,
old
yeah.
cemetery, a Gullah cemetery down in the middle of Harbour Town. And as a
Very
matter of fact, there was a
fascinating.
nice article about it, that some fella from out of the area is down here 6 months out of the year, his own money and expense. The Gullah tradition is to bury your people by water, so that's why you'll find some of the better cemeteries. Some of the cemeteries on the island are in some of the best real estate on the island, and it's because of a tradition of carrying the soul on or whatever. But that little cemetery down in Harbour Town is
It's
just
unique.
wonderful,
It is.
very unique.
Special.
And a lot of the gravestones have the person's dinner plate inserted in it. And I've heard certain reasons. I had heard, and someone said, no, that's not the reason. I had heard that because they were slaves, all they had in life was their dinner plate that they actually owned, and that's why it was put into their gravestone. But have you heard do you know an explanation for that?
Mm-mm.
No.
Differently.
That's
I mean,
what I
the
heard.
other ones-
Yeah.
Yeah,
What was
that
it?
was the only explanation.
I haven't, they just said that's wrong, but I don't know what it is. So I'm continuing to tell that story.
It's a good story.
Until I hear
I know
about
my
it.
customers that I've shown Sea Pines to love that place, and they love the Tabby ruins.
The Tabby Ruins in Baynard, off Baynard
Which is
Park.
a little different than the beaches, the golf course, the tennis. It just added a little humanity to,
It
our
does.
tour.
It
Well,
does.
Other people who want to come to Sea Pines and then do have that historical bend. A lot of people don't understand that we do have a lot of history on the island, and now we're getting into my area. But however, there is a lot of history here on Hilton Head, and people who enjoy those two spots in Sea Pines might want to know about the other spots that are available on the island too, and I'll talk to you about that at a different time. But there's several places that people who have a little historic bend to them can have to go visit.
Well, the shell ring, for one,
Mhm.
in the forest preserve. It's a 500-acre forest preserve. There's a shell ring.
The Forest Preserve is beautiful.
They're-
If
both
you've
of
never
them
been
are
back there.
beautiful. Yeah, the new
Beautiful
home
lake
preserve.
back there.
Beautiful lake.
Oh, really?
Yes, you
Yeah.
can have parties, like Barbara said, you can have parties, you can reserve a pavilion in the Forest Preserve. And then there's the new Hall Preserve, which is
We've
down by.
had parties
Reserved
there,
there.
Keller
Now,
Williams.
you can only have parties there if you're a property owner?
No, I believe you can use the
I
Forest
believe
Preserve
that's correct, yeah,
for other people.
Okay.
yeah.
And horseback rentals, I mean, at the stable?
Yeah,
They do not have to be property owners.
yeah, the equestrian center is open to the public too, for pony rides, horseback rides. And there's horse shows there periodically through the year.
Going to the equestrian center, you still have to pay your $5.
Yes.
Yeah,
Any.
probably.
I'm sure
They
you
don't
do.
validate parking.
Haven't gotten there yet.
Now, if you have a horse in there, Michaela, did you say if you have a horse?
No, I said, if you say you want to go to the horse show.
Yeah, you still have to pay, but I think if you board a horse there, you get some kind of special sticker.
Yeah, you don't have to pay every time you go to visit your horse.
Does it have to be a live horse? Could it be an inflatable
Sorry.
horse? Just actually paid. I
My
got a
Little
horse.
Pony.
I got a horse.
Yeah.
I've used up all my questions. Is there anything y'all think that we should ask our resident panel experts? Any problem you've run into as a realtor that we need to share? Because this is going to go on YouTube. For those of you who weren't in here, we're going to upload this to YouTube. We're going to have our own little site, and you can reference it, if you know you have a customer coming. So that's why we're doing this, and we're taping. So, and then these packages, if somebody wants them, if you're talking to somebody else and they say, oh, I wish I could have been there, Nick will have this in his email and he can email it to them. But I think a big important thing is some of the things where they told you could find your information, like
Living.com.
calling the regimes. Main purpose is I don't want you to get in trouble as a realtor, and I want you to know where to get the information that you need. So is there anything else y'all can think of we need to add?
Again, please don't count on anything that anybody's put into the listing because that auto pop is probably 50% wrong. So just make sure that if you're writing a contract over the weekend, give yourself some time, that your folks have a time frame to do some due diligence to make sure that you can get the appropriate information.
What are the other fee simple villa complexes other than Night Heron, Ocean Course, and?
Is Carolina Place one?
Carolina Place, Lake Forest,
Fairway Oaks?
Fairway Oaks.
Probably.
Yeah, we'll have to, give me a minute to think about them and then,
Our
Residence
Green
Club.
Garden. You said one at
Green
Harbour Town.
Gardens and Pine Island Court.
Yeah.
How about in Harbour Town, the
Lighthouse 2 and
No, the
Sea Loft,
circular.
Sea Loft.
Sea Loft.
Or Fee Simple.
They are.
It'll tell you in the, if it's a condominium, it'll say condominium in the deed, the tax records, the real list. If it's condominium, it will say. If it's not, it'll have a lot number. So if you bring up something in Sea Pines and it has a lot number, then that's fee simple. Otherwise, if you bring in like Plantation Club, it'll say condominium regime number for whatever.
And the mailing address is the complex address.
That's a good clue.
Mhm.
Yes, sir.
In Lake Forest, I've had 2 situations in the last year with broken water lines. And first time the owner just paid the bill that the regime sent him. The second time, I said, well, where's the lot lines? Because this is not what you've told me as a builder in the past. And they produced a document that says, here are the lot lines. It was not a plat. Those were not lot lines. They were building set-outs to construct the buildings. So the regime has no idea where the lot lines are
Okay.
in Lake Forest.
Well, they do get surveyed. I know that because the last several that I've sold in there, they had survey stakes out.
Okay.
So what the regime knows and,
What they
what's
wanna
done
share.
via closing are 2 different things. But that's a good thing if there is a problem to find out where the break was, because if it was out in the street, that owner shouldn't have to pay for it.
Now, these were well in the common ground.
Then they shouldn't have paid. Yeah. Thank you for that, yeah.
Lands End.
Land's End.
That's fee
Fee
simple.
Yeah.
Just remember, look for a lot number. If it's a lot number, it's a fee simple. If it has a regime in it, in real list, it's a condominium.
And there's nothing wrong with it. It's that your whole regime setup is going to be
It
different.
changes your insurance.
Yes.
It changes, that's the most important thing, is it changes the insurance and how the insurance is paid.
And you're responsible for the outside.
And you're responsible for everything. Yeah, typically the regime is smaller and all it's covering is the common areas and a pool if there is a pool.
You
Yes.
may have mentioned this when I was out, and I apologize.
Can you stop 1 second?
So sorry.
Oh, so hard.